A chill wind swept through Seattle, carrying with it the salty tang of Puget Sound and a promise of rain. It was a typical autumn evening, with the sky an ominous shade of gray, threatening to unleash a downpour at any moment. The streets were mostly empty, the city's residents preferring the warmth and comfort of their homes to the unpredictable weather outside. However, at the edge of Pioneer Square, a group of 6 friends gathered near an unassuming grate in the sidewalk, ready to embark on an adventure they would soon regret. Lily, the de facto leader of the group, adjusted her backpack and checked her flashlight one last time. She had always been fascinated by urban exploration and had spent weeks researching the labyrinthine network of tunnels beneath Seattle. Known as the Seattle Underground, these passageways were remnants of the city's past, long abandoned and largely forgotten by the public. Tonight, she and her friends would uncover their secrets. "Ready, guys?" Lily asked, her voice a mix of excitement and nervous energy. Her auburn hair, usually tied back in a ponytail, now hung loose, framing her freckled face. "Let's do this," Sam replied, giving her a reassuring smile. Sam was the athletic one, always up for a challenge. He adjusted his headlamp and helped pry open the heavy grate, revealing a rusty ladder descending into the darkness below. One by one, they climbed down. Derek, the tech-savvy member of the group, carrying a camera and a portable GPS. Mia, the quiet artist, her sketchbook tucked securely in her bag. Lucas, the jokester, trying to lighten the mood with a quip about sewer monsters. And Hannah, the skeptic, who had agreed to come along only because of her loyalty to her friends. As the last of them climbed down and the grate clanged shut above them, they were enveloped in darkness. The faint beam of their flashlights barely cut through the pitch black, revealing damp, moss-covered walls and a narrow tunnel stretching out before them. "This is so cool," Lucas said, his voice echoing off the walls. "It's like something out of a horror movie." "Don't jinx it," Mia replied, her voice tense. She clutched her sketchbook tightly, her eyes darting around nervously. They walked in silence for a while, their footsteps splashing through puddles and kicking up dust. The air was musty and cold, filled with the scent of decay and mildew. Every sound seemed amplified in the confined space. The drip of water from the ceiling, the scurrying of unseen creatures, the creak of the ancient wooden beams supporting the tunnel. Lily led the way, consulting the map she had printed from an old website dedicated to Seattle's forgotten places. The map was crude, hand-drawn, and faded in places, but it was all they had. "According to this, there should be a larger chamber up ahead," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's where we'll find the real history." As they moved deeper into the tunnels, the sense of unease grew. The laughter and jokes from earlier faded, replaced by a heavy silence. The walls seemed to close in around them, the darkness pressing down like a physical weight. Derek, at the back of the group, adjusted his camera and started recording. "Just in case we find something interesting," he said, more to himself than anyone else. The red recording light was a small comfort in the oppressive blackness. After what felt like an eternity, they reached the chamber Lily had mentioned. It was larger than the narrow tunnels they had been navigating, with high ceilings and walls covered in cryptic symbols and graffiti. The floor was littered with debris, broken bottles, old newspapers, and remnants of long-forgotten lives. "Look at this place," Sam said, his voice echoing eerily. "It's like a time capsule." Lily moved to the center of the chamber, her flashlight sweeping across the walls. "This is incredible," she whispered. "These markings, they're not just graffiti. They're something else." As they explored the chamber, Derek's flashlight beam fell on a rusted metal box, half buried in the dirt. "Guys, check this out," he called, bending down to examine it. With some effort, he pried it open, revealing a collection of old photographs and a worn journal. The photographs were yellowed with age, showing faces frozen in expressions of fear and despair. The journal's pages were brittle, filled with frantic handwriting detailing the experiences of those who had ventured into the tunnels before them. "These people, they never made it out," Mia said, her voice trembling as she read aloud from the journal. "They were trapped down here, or something trapped them." A cold dread settled over the group as the realization sank in. They were not the first to explore these tunnels, and if they weren't careful, they might not be the last to disappear. Unseen eyes seemed to watch them from the shadows, and the air grew even colder, as if the tunnels themselves were warning them to leave. But it was too late to turn back now. The descent had begun, and the true horror was yet to come. The tension from the initial descent lingered as the group continued deeper into the tunnels. Each step echoed through the narrow passageways, a constant reminder of the miles of earth and concrete above them. The darkness seemed to thicken, pressing in on them from all sides. The oppressive atmosphere was only broken by the occasional drip of water from the ceiling and the scurrying of unseen creatures. Lily led the way, her flashlight beam sweeping back and forth across the damp, moss-covered walls. The crude map she clutched in her hand was their only guide through the maze of tunnels. She paused at each intersection, squinting at the faded lines and trying to match them with their surroundings. "This way," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The excitement that had once laced her tone was now replaced by a steely determination to find something worth their effort. Sam, close behind her, kept glancing over his shoulder, his athletic frame tense and ready for anything. "Are we getting close?" he asked, his voice low. Lily nodded. "According to the map, there should be another chamber ahead. It looks bigger than the last one." Derek, with his camera still recording, walked beside Mia. He tried to capture the eerie beauty of the tunnels, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the photographs and the journal they had found. The fear etched on the faces of those in the pictures haunted him. Lucas and Hannah brought up the rear. Lucas, usually the jokester, had fallen silent, his flashlight trembling in his hand. Hannah, the skeptic, kept muttering to herself, trying to rationalize the strange occurrences and the foreboding feeling that gnawed at her. "Look around," Lily instructed, her voice steady. "There has to be something here." The group fanned out, their flashlight beams dancing across the walls. It was Lucas who stumbled upon the first clue. "Hey, over here," he called, his voice tinged with a mix of excitement and fear. They hurried over to where he stood, staring at a section of the wall that looked different from the rest. The bricks here were newer, less weathered, and there was a small, almost imperceptible gap between them. "What is it?" Sam asked, peering closely. "I think it's a hidden compartment," Lucas replied. "Help me with this." Together they pried at the loose bricks, their fingers scraping against the rough surface. One by one, the bricks came loose, revealing a small, dark space behind them. Inside was a metal box, similar to the one they had found earlier, but in better condition. Derek carefully lifted the box out and set it on the ground. It creaked open, revealing another set of old photographs and a leather-bound journal. The photographs were in better condition, showing clearer images of people in various states of distress. "These look more recent," Mia observed, her voice shaky. Lily opened the journal, her eyes scanning the frantic handwriting. "This is bad," she murmured. "Really bad." "What does it say?" Hannah asked, her skepticism wavering. Lily read aloud, her voice echoing through the chamber. "The journal talks about the same entity we've been sensing. It describes it as a malevolent force that feeds on fear and despair. The writer warns that once you're in its domain, it's nearly impossible to escape." A cold shiver ran down their spines as Lily continued. "The writer describes seeing hallucinations, hearing whispers, and feeling an overwhelming sense of dread. They mention that the entity uses these tactics to separate the group, making them easier to pick off one by one." As she spoke, the air grew colder, and the oppressive feeling intensified. The friends exchanged uneasy glances, the realization dawning on them that they were now the latest prey in a long line of victims. "We need to get out of here," Sam said, his voice firm. "Now." But as they turned to leave, the walls seemed to shift and close in, the exit disappearing into the darkness. Panic surged through them as the tunnel seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction, and the true horror of their situation became clear. They were trapped in the forgotten tunnels, with no way out, and a malevolent entity closing in. The discovery of the photographs and journal had given them a glimpse into the fate that awaited them. As the darkness pressed in, the friends knew they had to stay together and find a way to escape before it was too late. The oppressive darkness seemed to grow thicker with each step the friends took away from the chamber. The air felt colder, the walls more claustrophobic. The discovery of the photographs and the journal had shaken them to their core. An uneasy silence fell over the group as they continued through the maze-like tunnels, each lost in their thoughts and fears. Lucas walked near the back, his usual bravado replaced by a deep-seated anxiety. He kept glancing over his shoulder, the flickering beam of his flashlight casting erratic shadows on the walls. The shapes seemed to twist and move, forming grotesque figures that vanished as soon as he focused on them. "Guys, wait up a second," Lucas called out, his voice unsteady. He stopped, trying to catch his breath and calm his racing heart. The others paused, turning to look at him. "You okay, man?" Sam asked, concern etched on his face. "Yeah, Just give me a minute," Lucas replied, rubbing his eyes. "I think I'm seeing things." "What do you mean?" Mia asked, stepping closer. The fear in her eyes mirrored his own. "Shadows," Lucas said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're moving. I know it sounds crazy, but it's like they're alive." The group exchanged uneasy glances. The journal's warnings about hallucinations echoed in their minds. "Let's keep moving," Lily said, trying to sound confident. "We need to find a way out of here. Staying in one place isn't going to help." Reluctantly, Lucas nodded and fell back into step with the others. But the sense of being watched, of something lurking just beyond the edge of the flashlight's beam, didn't fade. If anything, it grew stronger. As they walked, the tunnels seemed to close in around them. The darkness pressed down like a physical weight, and the air was thick with the scent of decay and mildew. Every sound was magnified, their footsteps, the drip of water, the rustling of unseen creatures. Lucas tried to focus on the path ahead, but his mind kept playing tricks on him. The shadows seemed to reach out, twisting into grotesque forms. He blinked rapidly, trying to clear his vision, but the hallucinations only intensified. Suddenly, a figure appeared at the edge of his flashlight's beam, a tall, gaunt silhouette with glowing eyes. Lucas froze, his breath catching in his throat. "Do you see that?" he whispered, his voice shaking. The others turned, their flashlights sweeping across the tunnel. But there was nothing there, only the damp, moss-covered walls. "See what?" Derek asked, his voice tense. Lucas shook his head, his heart pounding. "I swear I saw someone. Something." "It's just your mind playing tricks on you," Hannah said, though her voice lacked its usual skepticism. "This place is enough to drive anyone crazy." But Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, hunted. The hallucinations grew more vivid, the shadows more menacing. Every step was a struggle to keep his fear in check, to convince himself that it was all in his head. As they rounded a corner, the tunnel opened into another small chamber. The walls were covered in the same cryptic symbols, and the air was even colder here. Lucas's flashlight flickered, then went out entirely. "Damn it," he muttered, fumbling with the switch. But no matter how many times he clicked it, the light wouldn't come back on. "Here, use mine," Sam said, handing Lucas his spare flashlight. "It's probably just a loose connection." Lucas took the flashlight with trembling hands, grateful for the steady beam of light. But as he shone it around the chamber, his heart nearly stopped. The figure was back, standing just a few feet away, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. "Run!" Lucas screamed, backing away. "It's here!" Panic erupted as the group spun around, their flashlights frantically searching the darkness. But again there was nothing there, only the oppressive shadows and the growing sense of dread. "We need to get out of here," Lily said, her voice steady but urgent. "Stick together and keep moving. Don't let the darkness get to you." They hurried out of the chamber, the walls seeming to close in even more as they moved deeper into the tunnels. Lucas's heart pounded in his chest, his mind a whirlwind of fear and confusion. He knew what he had seen, even if the others didn't believe him. As they continued their desperate search for an exit, the first hallucination marked the beginning of their descent into true horror. The malevolent entity was real, and it was coming for them, one by one. The claustrophobic atmosphere of the tunnels grew even more oppressive as the friends pressed onward, the shadows dancing menacingly in the flickering light of their flashlights. The air was thick with an almost tangible sense of dread, as if the tunnels themselves were alive and watching their every move. Mia, usually the calm and collected one, felt an icy grip on her mind. Her steps faltered as she began to hear faint whispers, barely audible but impossible to ignore. The voices seemed to come from all directions, merging into an incomprehensible cacophony that made her head throb. "Mia, are you all right?" Lily asked, noticing her friend's distress. Mia shook her head, trying to clear the voices from her mind. "I'm hearing things," she admitted, her voice trembling. Whispers. They won't stop. The others exchanged uneasy glances. The journal's warnings about hallucinations and psychological torment were becoming all too real. "We need to stick together," Sam said firmly. "Whatever this thing is, it's trying to mess with our heads. We can't let it win." But the whispers in Mia's mind grew louder, more insistent. They promised salvation and doom in equal measure, their seductive tones pulling her deeper into a state of confusion and fear. She stumbled, clutching her head in agony. "Get away from me!" Mia screamed, her voice echoing through the tunnels. She broke free from the group, sprinting down a side passage, the voices urging her to run faster. "Mia! Wait!" Derek shouted, but it was too late. She vanished into the darkness, her footsteps fading away. Panic surged through the remaining friends as they realized how easily the entity had managed to separate them. The tunnels seemed to stretch and shift, the walls closing in as if to swallow them whole. "We have to find her," Lily said, her voice shaking but resolute. "We can't leave her alone down here." They hurried after Mia, their flashlights casting frantic beams of light through the twisting passages. The oppressive feeling grew stronger with each step, as if the entity was tightening its grip around them. Suddenly, Sam felt a sharp, invisible force yank him backwards. He staggered, nearly falling as he struggled against the unseen grip. "Something's got me," he yelled, panic rising in his voice. Lily and Derek rushed to his side, but there was nothing to see, nothing to fight against. Sam's body jerked as if pulled by invisible strings, his eyes wide with terror. "Hold on, Sam," Derek shouted, grabbing his friend's arm. But the force was too strong, dragging Sam further into the darkness. "Let him go," Lily screamed, swinging her flashlight wildly. The beam illuminated nothing but empty air and shadowy walls. The unseen force seemed to laugh at their helplessness, tightening its grip on Sam. With a final, desperate effort, Sam wrenched free from the invisible hold, collapsing to the ground. He gasped for breath, his face pale and drenched in sweat. "What the hell was that?" he panted, his voice shaking. "I couldn't see anything, but it felt like something was pulling me." "It's the entity," Hannah said, her skepticism now replaced by a deep-seated fear. "It's real, and it's toying with us." As they helped Sam to his feet, the realization sank in that they were dealing with something far beyond their understanding. The entity wasn't just a ghost or a hallucination. It was a malevolent force that could manipulate the physical world as easily as it preyed on their minds. "We have to keep moving," Lily said, her voice steady despite the terror clawing at her heart. "We need to find Mia and get out of here." They pressed on, the tunnels seeming to stretch endlessly before them. Every step was a battle against the unseen force that lurked in the shadows, its presence a constant, suffocating weight. The whispers in Mia's mind grew louder, guiding her deeper into the labyrinth, away from her friends and any hope of escape. As the friends navigated the maze-like passages, they felt the entity's influence growing stronger. It played on their fears and insecurities, driving wedges between them and sapping their will to fight. The walls seemed to close in, the darkness becoming almost palpable as the tunnels twisted and turned. The unseen force was relentless, a malevolent presence that hunted them through the shadows. It was no longer a question of if they would escape, but how many of them would survive the ordeal. With every step, the friends could feel the entity's grip tightening, drawing them further into its deadly embrace. Their only hope was to stay together, to fight against the entity's influence and find a way out of the forgotten tunnels. But with the unseen force growing ever stronger, their chances of escape seemed to dwindle with each passing moment. The oppressive darkness seemed to have a life of its own, wrapping around the friends like a suffocating shroud. The unseen force that had nearly claimed Sam left them all on edge, and Mia's sudden disappearance weighed heavily on their minds. As they pressed forward, the strain of their ordeal began to take its toll. Lily led the way, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The air grew colder, and the whispers that had tormented Mia now seemed to echo faintly in the minds of the others. Fear and paranoia crept in, gnawing at their resolve. "We need to find Mia," Lily said, her voice tense but determined. "We can't leave her down here." "She's gone," Hannah snapped, her skepticism now replaced by raw fear. "We're all going to end up like those people in the photographs if we don't get out of here now." "We can't just abandon her," Sam argued, still shaken from his encounter with the unseen force. "We stick together, remember?" But the strain of their situation was beginning to show. The tunnels seemed to twist and turn endlessly, the walls closing in on them. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat, and every sound set their nerves on edge. "Look, arguing isn't going to help," Derek said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We need to keep moving and find a way out." Tensions flared as fear and frustration boiled over. Lucas, who had been silent since his hallucination, finally spoke up. "This is all your fault, Lily," he said, his voice trembling with anger. "You're the one who wanted to come down here." "Don't blame her," Sam shot back. "We all agreed to this." "Yeah, but she's the one who found the map and convinced us it would be fun," Lucas retorted. "Look where it's gotten us." Lily felt the weight of their accusations, but she refused to back down. "I'm sorry, okay? I didn't know it would be like this. But we have to stay focused if we're going to get out of here." The group's unity was fracturing under the pressure. The unseen force seemed to feed on their fear and discord, growing stronger with each passing moment. The whispers grew louder, sowing seeds of doubt and mistrust. Hannah, usually the voice of reason, now seemed to be unraveling. "We're not getting out of here, are we?" she said, her voice trembling. "We're going to die down here, just like those people in the photos." "Stop it, Hannah," Sam said, trying to maintain some semblance of calm. "We're going to find Mia and get out of here. We just need to stay together." But the words rang hollow in the cold, oppressive darkness. The tunnels seemed to stretch endlessly before them, a labyrinth with no exit. The friends were lost, both physically and mentally, each step deeper into the maze eroding their hope. The group continued on, their flashlights flickering as if struggling against the malevolent presence that surrounded them. The air was thick with the scent of decay and mildew, and the faint sound of dripping water echoed through the tunnels. After what felt like hours, they reached another junction. The map was useless now, the crude lines and faded ink offering no guidance in the twisting maze. Lily's hands shook as she tried to make sense of their surroundings. "Which way?" Sam asked, his voice taut with tension. Lily shook her head, tears of frustration and fear welling in her eyes. "I don't know. I don't know anymore." "Great," Lucas muttered. "We're completely lost." The despair in his voice was a reflection of the growing hopelessness that threatened to consume them all. The unseen force seemed to revel in their misery, the whispers now a constant, maddening presence. "We can't stay here," Derek said, his voice breaking through the fog of fear. "We have to keep moving. Standing still is only going to make things worse." Reluctantly, the group chose a direction and pressed on, their steps heavy with exhaustion and dread. The tunnels twisted and turned, each passageway looking the same as the last. The sense of being watched, hunted, never left them. The entity's influence grew stronger, the whispers more insistent. It played on their fears and insecurities, driving wedges between them. Every sound was a potential threat, every shadow a hiding place for the malevolent force. As they navigated the maze-like passages, the group's unity continued to fracture. Fear and paranoia gnawed at their bonds, each of them struggling to hold on to their sanity in the face of the relentless darkness. The friends knew they had to stay together if they had any hope of escaping the forgotten tunnels. But with each step, the unseen force worked to tear them apart, its malevolent presence a constant reminder of the horror that awaited them if they failed. Their only chance was to find Mia and somehow break free of the entity's grip. But with their unity shattered and the darkness closing in, the path to escape seemed more impossible than ever. The friends were on the brink of collapse, their spirits battered by the unrelenting darkness and the unseen force that hunted them. Every step felt like a battle against an invisible enemy, their once strong unity now fractured and fragile. Desperation clung to them like a second skin as they stumbled upon a chamber similar to the one they had found earlier. It was large, with high ceilings and walls covered in the same cryptic symbols, but this time it was filled with the skeletal remains of those who had come before them. "Look at this place," Lily whispered, her voice trembling as she swept her flashlight across the ghastly scene. "This is where it ends for so many." The sight of the skeletal hands reaching out from the dirt, as if grasping for freedom, sent a chill through the group. The entity's presence was palpable now, a dark cloud that seemed to suffocate the air around them. "We have to do something," Derek said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We can't just wait here to die." Lily nodded, her mind racing. She recalled the journal they had found earlier, the makeshift ritual described within its pages. It was a long shot, but it was their only chance. "The journal," she said urgently. "It mentioned a ritual, a way to banish the entity. We have to try it." "Are you sure about this?" Hannah asked, her skepticism mingled with fear. "What if it makes things worse?" "Do we have any other choice?" Sam replied, his voice grim. "We're running out of time." With a sense of urgency, they gathered the materials described in the journal: salt, candles, and a knife, items they had salvaged from the remains around them. The instructions were vague, the ritual a blend of ancient rites and desperate measures, but it was their only hope. They formed a circle in the center of the chamber, the dim light of their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. Derek carefully drew a circle of salt around them, the barrier meant to protect them from the entity's wrath. Lily placed the candles at the cardinal points, their flickering flames barely penetrating the darkness. "Okay, here goes," Lily said, taking a deep breath. She began to chant the incantation from the journal, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. The others joined in, their voices a unified plea for salvation. As the ritual progressed, the air grew colder, the oppressive presence of the entity closing in around them. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices that threatened to drown out their chants. Shadows twisted and writhed at the edge of the salt circle, the entity's fury palpable. Suddenly the candles flickered and went out, plunging them into darkness. The salt circle began to crack, the unseen force breaking through their fragile barrier. "Keep going!" Derek shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Don't stop!" The friends clung to the ritual, their voices rising in defiance. The entity's presence was almost overwhelming now, a malevolent force that seemed to wrap around them, suffocating and cold. The shadows reached for them, the whispers now a roar. In a final act of desperation, Lily took the knife and made a small cut on her palm, letting a few drops of blood fall into the circle. The journal had mentioned a blood sacrifice, the ultimate act of defiance against the entity. As her blood mingled with the salt, the chamber seemed to shudder. The shadows recoiled, the whispers fading into a low, angry hiss. The friends continued their chant, their voices now a triumphant cry. The air crackled with energy, the entity's grip weakening. The oppressive darkness began to lift, the malevolent force retreating in the face of their defiance. The chamber grew brighter, the flickering light of the candles returning. With a final, guttural scream, the entity vanished, leaving only a lingering sense of unease in its wake. The friends collapsed to the ground, their exhaustion and relief palpable. "We did it," Sam whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. "We actually did it." The friends hugged each other, their relief mingled with tears. They had faced the darkness and survived, their unity and determination breaking the entity's hold. The friends emerged from the chamber, their breaths ragged and their bodies trembling from the ordeal. The oppressive darkness of the tunnels seemed to press in on them, but there was a newfound determination in their eyes. They had faced the malevolent entity and survived, but the fight wasn't over yet. They still needed to find their way out of the labyrinthine passages and back to the safety of the surface. "Let's keep moving," Lily said, her voice steady but urgent. "We need to find Mia and get out of here." With renewed purpose, they navigated the twisting tunnels, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The walls seemed to pulse with a residual malevolence, as if the entity's presence still lingered in the shadows. Every sound echoed ominously, keeping them on edge. "Mia," Sam called out, his voice echoing through the passageways. "Mia, where are you?" They pressed on, the tunnels seemingly endless. Time lost all meaning as they searched, the minutes stretching into an eternity. The sense of being watched, hunted, never left them. The entity might have been banished, but its influence still hung heavy in the air. After what felt like hours, they heard a faint sound, a weak, desperate cry. "Did you hear that?" Derek asked, his ears straining to catch the sound again. "Mia!" Lily shouted, hope surging through her. "We're here! Where are you? Help! Please!" Mia's voice was faint, barely audible, but it was enough to guide them. They followed the sound, their footsteps quickening. They found Mia in a small alcove, huddled against the wall, her eyes wide with terror. She looked exhausted, her clothes torn and dirty. The relief that washed over the group was palpable. "We thought we'd lost you," Sam said, helping her to her feet. "I thought I was going to die down here," Mia whispered, tears streaming down her face. The whispers, they wouldn't stop. "It's over now," Lily said, embracing her friend. "We're getting out of here." With Mia back in the fold, the group pressed on, driven by the knowledge that they were close to freedom. The air grew colder as they moved, and the tunnels seemed to close in around them, but their determination never wavered. They navigated the maze-like passages, each turn bringing them closer to the surface. The map, once confusing and unreliable, now seemed to guide them with uncanny accuracy. The oppressive darkness began to lighten, and the faintest hint of dawn's light seeped through cracks in the ceiling. Finally, they reached a familiar tunnel, the one they had entered through. The sight of the rusty ladder leading up to the grate was like a beacon of hope. "We made it," Lucas breathed, his voice filled with disbelief and relief. One by one they climbed the ladder, their hearts pounding with anticipation. Lily was the last to ascend, her hands gripping the rungs tightly as she pushed the grate open. The cold, pre-dawn air hit her face, a stark contrast to the stifling atmosphere of the tunnels. They emerged into the quiet streets of Pioneer Square, the city still shrouded in the early morning light. The sky was a canvas of soft pinks and purples, the promise of a new day. The friends stood there for a moment, breathing in the fresh air, the nightmare of the tunnels finally behind them. "We did it," Sam said, a smile breaking through his exhaustion. "We survived," Mia added, her voice trembling with relief. As they walked away from the entrance, the events of the night began to sink in. They had faced a malevolent force and come out the other side, their bond stronger than ever. The tunnels, once a source of terror, now seemed like a distant memory, but the experience had changed them. They had seen the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of their city and had emerged with a deeper understanding of their own strength and resilience. "Let's get some coffee," Derek suggested, his voice lightening the mood. "I think we've earned it." They laughed, the sound a welcome relief after the silence of the tunnels. As they walked through the waking city, the memories of the forgotten tunnels would stay with them, a reminder of the darkness they had faced and the strength they had found in each other. Though they had escaped the malevolent entity's grasp, the friends knew they would never forget the horrors they had encountered. But they also knew that they had faced the darkness together and emerged stronger, their unity the key to their survival. As the sun began to rise, casting its warm light over the city, the friends moved forward, leaving the nightmares of the tunnels behind and stepping into a new day filled with hope and possibility.